Wrestling with wrestling's past and present.
How old were you?
I was -3.
See, JR is trying to contain Jim Ross.
McFlurry,
It's Mick Foley. Definitely not his, the barn burner that Leif Cassidy and Ty Riley Singh was, but, we'll leave that there.
We digress.
God, I hope that storyline ends soon.
And 6 to 8 weeks later, they mail you a freaking magnet.
Yep. You may know him as the Red Rooster.
Hager kept making out with his wife. It was weird. So then, I'm waiting for them to put the Zelina Vega on a pole match for that to be.
It is in the mail, my good sir. No, it wasn't. Paul.
Giving us a reason to come here and listen to ourselves talk.
Absolutely, and
And then you can listen to us too. We're off to a rough start.
This is Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present. I'm Tim Kurt.
And I'm Roland Fulis.
Now Mongo.
And today, episode 59 is all about WCW Souled Out 1999.
Can we all agree that Lex Luger is the most awkward looking guy doing this ever? I know this has nothing to do with we'll talk about it when he comes, but when he comes out doing the Wolfpack sign, he looks like a cripple. Like he's weed, like he's throwing gang signs. I don't know what he's doing. He doesn't realize it's this. He's it's weird looking. I don't know.
How ironic that statement though, because unfortunately now he is in a wheelchair, as we all know.
I don't know if that was a precursor, and I'm not trying to be mean, but
no, I know.
That was one thing me today that was I watched I finished watching it last night, and I was like, man, Luger, he's like Wolfpack. He's throwing. I'm like, those aren't the right signs.
He's clearly the adult trying to fit in, be cool, be like, I'm hip, I'm with it.
Well, and he's probably one of the most non-fitting in members of the NWO. There's been some, but he just doesn't fit. Just like when he was in the Horsemen, he didn't really fit the Horsemen either. I don't. It's just Luger. Yeah. Anyways, I wanted to get that off my chest before I forgot.
So this pay-per-view kind of starts off in a interesting way. We have a presidential address by Ric Flair, who just became president over Eric Bischoff. And then they cut to the crowd, and then they cut to the backstage area, and Goldberg is laying in pain holding his knee. So something happened to Goldberg before the show started.
I like how Shivani's did he slip off the chair?
Knowing Goldberg he always headbutts everything for. Did he just try to knee drop something to get ready? Is that the storyline we're going for here?
Maybe he got wobbly after he hit the door. He's like, they said there was a disturbance. Maybe that was it. I don't know.
No, the only disturbance is that people still want Goldberg to be relevant today.
Yeah, that's the thing. This pay-per-view's from '99, and guess who's main eventing Royal Rumble in 3 weeks?
Yep.
Or 2 weeks, whatever it is. Yeah. Hey, did anybody catch SmackDown? Jey Uso called him Oldberg.
Just nice.
Yes, he did.
I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, yeah, that's right. It's Oldberg.
Yep.
So we got 9 matches to discuss. The first one is Chris Benoit and Mike Enos. Chris Benoit gets the win in about 10.5 minutes. Chris Benoit representing the Horsemen here. I thought this match was all right. It was a decent starter, but nothing too memorable for me on this one.
Well, and it didn't have any meaning. It wasn't really it wasn't a super grudge match or Benoit back in this day, Benoit could go. Not that he couldn't even when he was in WWE, but he was a great guy to start out the match, but there was really no heat with him and Mike Enos.
Yeah.
And who is Mike Enos? I tried looking him up and he was a nobody. It just doesn't make sense. And even on the WB network, because they're racing Chris Benoit for obvious reasons, it just said Mike Enos match. If you looked at the little thing on below, it said Mike Enos match, and I was like, who the hell is Mike Enos? I was trying to figure that out the whole match. And then they botched the ending. It was such a sloppy ending. I didn't even know what the heck was going on, but poor Chris, like Roland said, he can go, and that's not the opponent for Chris to showcase his stuff.
No, not at all. Next up, we have a singles match here between Norman Smiley and Chavo Guerrero Jr. Norman Smiley comes out with the urn of Pepe, which is Chavo Guerrero's wooden horse.
Horse on a pole. Yeah. The old hobby horse.
Norman, and that comes into play at the finish there. Norman Smiley throws the ashes, so to speak, into the face of Chavo Guerrero, and makes him tap out to the chicken wing in about 15 and a half minutes here.
This match was too long.
Yes.
It wasn't a bad match. I mean, they both can wrestle. I mean, Norman Smiley is probably one of the better trainers to this day with people. Probably a little underrated. A lot of people don't really know behind the scenes all the stuff he's done to contribute to the business, even now. So the match itself wasn't terrible. It's just it was probably about, I don't know, 6 to 8 minutes too long. I mean, if it had been like 8 or 9 minutes, it would have probably been fine.
Yeah, I agree. That was what I kind of wrote down too, is good God, how long was this match and why? And like you said, they both can go and they're both technical wrestlers. And, Norman, like we've talked on the previous show, he's training currently with NXT, one of the trainers, but sweet Jesus, that was a long match. Like, what?
Speaking of that, though, if you look at the card, all these matches were pretty decent length for time. The shortest match was just 8 minutes. So there wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, they let, not to cut you off, obviously, but they let them wrestle, which is refreshing. But sometimes they let them go too far, which is the opposite of refreshing. It's like literally, like Mongo said, like, sweet Jesus, get it over with. Like you could have done the same thing and had more impact in 8 minutes than you did in 15.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only so many times you can see Norman Smiley do the wiggle and spanking someone that you're just over it.
There was that spot in the match where he had Chavo's legs around him and he started doing it to him. That was kind of funny. I'll give him that.
Next up is Fit Finlay and Van Hammer. Fit Finlay gets the win in 8 minutes. Kind of surprising because we all know Van Hammer is probably on the Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling, right?
Peace and love, man. Van Hammer. Yeah.
Far out.
Far out.
So how far has WCW fallen at this point? Because, I mean, Christ, from 95 to 98, it was such a solid company. And then it's like in 99, they were like, let's do Van Hammer. Let's do this kind of crap. This was the nosedive. And yeah, Tim and I talked about it on the last WCW. Like, holy crap, 99, 2000 was just terrible. This match, poor Fit Finlay, another guy who can go, just had to wrestle a terrible gimmick wrestler.
And for people who don't realize, Fit Finlay might be the most influential person in the women's revolution that we have now, for him putting matches together for the WWE. He was the guy, the agent behind a lot of the best matches you've seen.
Which makes sense. I mean, he's one of the best technical wrestlers. I mean, he can tell a story, and his footwork's unlike any I've ever seen. He's so fluid in the ring for such a guy that always a glorified mid-carder, but I love Fit Finlay.
Well, and it's not like he was ever, the fastest guy or the biggest or the strongest, but he was. The term "brick shithouse" describes Fit Finlay. That's what he was. He was a stocky, big, and for a guy his size, he could still do some stuff that was quick. But again, he was never the fastest. He wasn't, out there Rey Mysterio head scissor takedown and all this stuff. But for what he did and what he does and what he, like you said, telling stories, one of the best at it. Probably more underrated now, knowing the contributions he's had with NXT and the women there, just to prove what kind of mind he was for the business.
Yeah, I'd put him into the class of like the Billy Guns and the Road Dogs, where I'm not saying wrestling style, but just where their wrestling brains are just another level, that they can bring so much to the current product.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. Moving on, we have another singles match. We start off with 5 singles matches on this pay-per-view. The fourth one here is Bam Bam Bigelow getting a win over Wrath in about 9.5 minutes. I'll be honest with you, I started to fall asleep during this one. So this one didn't do anything for me. I mean, it's just your classic 2 big guys going at it. Maybe a match, again, that went a little too long.
Yeah, it wasn't. It's two bigger guys. I mean, Wrath, again, more or less a nobody. And at this point, Bam Bam Bigelow, a little bit over the hill. Obviously, not the mid 90s Bam Bam that had some steam coming in, and I mean, he still had a name recognition, but at this point, he wasn't really the guy of old. And you could see that in some of his bumps. He wasn't taking them as fluidly as he had in the past. There was one cool spot where they did the double clothesline, essentially, where they hit each other, and Wrath like spun off him and land. So there was some decent stuff there, but yeah, definitely probably 3-4 minutes too long.
Yeah, I agree with you. Bam Bam just at this point, like you said, he just was falling from grace too. I mean, I thought they were going to do a whole Goldberg setup because I kind of remember this, like with the Starcade issues and everything else. I feel like they were teasing Goldberg versus Bam Bam for a while, and then you got Bam Bam versus Wrath. So that just shows WCW's booking at this point.
Don't spoil the ending, Mongo. One of the best endings in WCW history coming up.
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, I can't. When I lie, stuff happens.
Well, I was more referring to the pay-per-views before, the WCW Nitros before, not the ending of this one. But
well, yeah, I didn't want you to spoil it because you were saying the whole Bam Bam Goldberg thing. You might have said too much already, so let's.
Don't want to spoil it for you guys.
No.
From 22 years ago.
Yeah, well, some of these people haven't seen it. I know my mom watches every week, so shout out to my mom. She hasn't seen it ever. So she didn't see it back then. She's not going to see it now. Audio problems all the time. So yeah, I hope you hear this, Mother. Thank you for your feedback.
And if you do happen to watch this pay-per-view, you can skip a lot of it. Don't worry.
Yeah.
That's probably the best advice we can give you. Have your fast forward button ready.
Moving on, we have Lex Luger getting a win over Conan by submission in 9.5 minutes. Storyline here is Conan got kicked out of the NWO, so he's trying to find out who's responsible. So him and Lex Luger go at it. The match was pretty good. Miss Elizabeth comes in with a run-in, sprays Luger with paint, although Bobby Heenan and Tony Schiavone go back and forth for about 10 minutes, wondering if it's paint or not.
That was Conan that she sprayed.
What
not
did I
Luger.
say?
You said Luger.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, she sprayed Conan.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to make sure. I mean, not that we never misspeak on this show, but I don't want anybody confused. She was part of the NWO with Luger.
With Luger, yeah.
Can we also talk about Conan's awful punches at this point? I mean, I've seen some sloppy punches, but he was straight up missing him at one point. Luger didn't know what to do, and he was kind of like weirdly jerking his head to try to sell it, but Conan was missing by a mile with some of those right hands.
They had no chemistry in the ring at all. And I mean, Luger, for what he could have been or what he was, never made it to the level that he could have because he didn't have, I don't think he cared enough to learn a little bit more about the business and about telling a story. He was just a big body that was jacked up that could do certain things. And that's where it stopped, unfortunately. I think that if he had taken that next step and tried to sell and tell a story better, it would have been way more believable. Anything.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
off. No, you're good. No, I just wanted to say, no matter, not just this match, anything he did would have been better if he had taken that next, but he never really did. He was just like, I'm a jacked up dude. I'm going to get in a match. And that was it.
It's kind of like, the Chris Masters type where it's like you get that big bodied wrestler who has the look. They have like the it factor. They could be a good heel. They could be a good face. They could put on the matches. But like you said, they just don't learn enough about the product. They don't learn enough about telling a story in the match. So that at the end of the day, they're just a steroided, muscle-bound freak that gets their butt kicked.
Well, and Luger was brought in for the bodybuilding federation that McMahon originally was trying to start back in 94, 93. I can't remember when it was, but he wanted to start the WBF, the World Bodybuilding Federation. And that's why Luger was brought in to begin with.
Makes sense with how much he loves them all. If you're 6'6" and you're 300 pounds of muscle, you're getting over, pal.
Yeah.
I also want to give Conan some props in this match for his pants not falling down all the way. So you just see his underwear throughout the whole.
You want to reach through the screen and pull his pants up.
Yeah.
Hike him back up. I will say though that for everything that we're crapping on here, that Conan, easily the better performer, still did some really. I mean, at this point he was starting to not be. I mean, you remember the match that he had with Flair, Tim, when we did. I can't remember what pay-per-view it was, but that match he had with Flair for the United States Championship. Yeah. That match was actually a hell of a match, and we're not that far removed from it. So Conan still has some of that, but you can tell he's not quite the guy he was. Mm-hmm. But he still did some decent. I've always liked that rolling through clothesline. Kind of like the stuff that Van Dam does where he does the rolling thunder and stuff like that's just cool to see. But yeah, it definitely no chemistry in this match between the two guys.
And I think that's what hurt Conan too, because I mean, if you look at his LAX stuff in TNA later on, and even today he has influence. Santana Ortiz and AEW were trained by Conan and worked with Conan. He's really good. He has, like you said, he has the skills, and he had that great match with Flair. But I think the lack of chemistry hurts because he probably felt like, well, if Luger's not taking this seriously, I'm just getting through it. And I can't really blame a guy for that. And like you said, I'm glad his pants stayed up.
That was a good call, Tim.
Yes.
Nobody needs to see Conan's ass. not in 99, not in 2021.
Nope. Next up, we have a loser must wear a dress match between Chris Jericho with Ralphus and Perry Saturn. The storyline here is basically revolves around the referee, Scott Dickinson, who has some sort of beef with Perry Saturn. So you know it's going to be a screw job somewhere. It's kind of a very predictable ending. Perry Saturn rolls up Chris Jericho for the finish. Scott Dickinson reverses the roll up and fast counts, and Chris Jericho's the winner. And Perry Saturn has to put on a dress.
If it were me, and again, I know it's scripted, but if it were me, I'd be putting up way more of a fight trying to put a dress on than Saturn did.
I know.
All right, I guess I'll throw this dress on. Should I tuck my nipples in, or like what? He's just like, whatever. I guess I'll put this dress on. Where's my mop? Like he just, this whole thing sucked. The best part about this was Ralphus.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Yeah, I mean, it just the storyline was stupid, and they were talking about how at the beginning it was only if Saturn lost he had to wear a dress. So if Jericho lost, he didn't have to do anything. But then they changed it to the loser wears a dress. Like it just, that's all I gotta say.
That's Vince Russo booking 101 right there. Like, we're going to put a gimmick match out, and then we're not even going to know our own rules. Because even the announcers are kind of, like you said, they were kind of confused about the whole gimmick of it. And, you know, this was, you know, if anyone hasn't read Jericho's book, his first one, he talks a lot about this. This was them trying to, believe it or not, appease Jericho to have him sign a new contract. So they thought, in their grand scheme, we don't want to lose Jericho. What's going to put him in this program with Saturn? That'll fix things.
Bro,
Yeah.
I know what we'll do, bro. Vince Russo, stupid.
Yeah, if listeners out here curious about his podcast don't, I think we played a drinking game once where we tried to take a shot every time we said bro, and I was done at the intro.
I'm gonna say you'd be long dead. You'd be long dead by the time the show ended.
Next up is a fatal four-way match for the WCW Cruiserweight Championship between Billy Kidman, Rey Mysterio, Juventud Guerrera, and Psychosis. I thought these guys were a little bit hindered by the stipulation because you had to tag in and out for this. I think they could have put on a much better performance if it was a traditional fatal four-way where they're all wrestling at the same time. I was actually really looking forward to this one. When I saw this one on paper, I thought this one's going to be the best match of the night, and I think they just got hindered by the stipulation here.
I think it was the best match of the night, and the second half of the match was kind of like a tornado style. The rules kind of went by the wayside a little bit, but yeah, there was that cool spot where you had Hoovy and Psychosis on the apron, or trying to tag out to Kidman and Rey Mysterio. They did the double drop off the apron to make them fight each other. So they played it well. But yeah, if it had been like a tornado style from the get go, like a fatal four where everybody was involved, it probably would have been better. But I mean, like I said, I think for what they did in the ring, I think it was probably the best match on the card. I think. I mean, it's not like you said. It could have been better. It still wasn't bad. It was actually pretty good, but it could have been way better.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Same. I was with Tim. I was like, okay, this is gonna be the match of the night. This is gonna be the match of the fun, and the clunkiness of them trying to tag it, I just think killed some of the momentum and some of the spot planning. Like Roland said too, the spot in the apron and the double falling off, that was fun. And then the Hoovy driver, always one of my favorite moves. The way he does it, he's so fluid with it. And fun story about Psychosis. Psychosis and Super Crazy, when they came to WWE years ago, I went to King of the Ring down in Philadelphia. My friend Glenn and I were in the parking lot, waiting to get in, and all of a sudden we see this car roll up, and this guy rolls his window down, and there's Super Crazy and Psychosis. You guys know where we park? You know where we park? I was like, I have no idea. Oh, you're no help. And then they drive off, and they go in the one-way entrance right back towards where the highway was, and they were late for that pay-per-view tonight. So I got to see them why they were late, because they couldn't figure out how to drive in a parking lot.
Because I'm super and I'm crazy and I don't know where we're going.
Pretty much.
Next up is a tag team match. You have Rick and David Flair with Arn Anderson getting a win over Kurt Hennig and Barry Windham in about 14 minutes. This is David Flair's first match. This one, I don't know. It was all about the after effect of this match, what happened afterwards. Rick and David Flair were going to get the win after Arn Anderson gets involved. But afterwards, the NWO, both Black and White and Wolfpack come out, so they're working together here. And they just beat the crap out of David Flair while they handcuff Ric Flair to the ropes.
How many F-bombs did Flair throw?
I know.
He's like, I'm going to fucking kill you on camera, like probably 20 times. You hear it clear. I mean, I know it's pay-per-view, but still, like him just shouting it over and over again to Hogan. And then Hogan says the same thing back. And then he's like, not if I get you first. It's like what the hell? They went from throwing F-bombs around to being little kids like, no, tag, you're it. Not if I know, no tag backs. Like it was just weird. But yeah, no, it definitely all about the Flair being, doing it for Bischoff. Because Bischoff's the president, Flair's the president, that whole storyline was pretty much what revolved around this. Plus Kurt Hennig turning on the Horseman after Arn gave him his spot. So there was a lot of buildup here, and I just think it was like you took a gun and you just stuffed it full of gunpowder, but then you forgot to fire it. Like I feel like it was like ready to go, and it could have been so good, and it was just like, meh.
Yeah.
Perfect analogy. I literally wrote my notes. What a clusterfuck that was. Like it was. I had no idea. And can we just say thank you, since how green David was, that David wasn't in the ring that much, because he was green as hell. And just like you said, what was going on? It was like so much teasing, and then like the bantering back and forth. I was just out of it at this point. I'm like, if I had paid for this on pay-per-view, I'd have been pissed.
Yeah.
And I think if they had done it differently, where maybe Flair was in the crowd, David Flair was in the crowd, and they could have like ripped him over and then beat the shit out of him, I think that would have been better. But it just, like you said, he was so green, and it was the match like stopped like 400 times.
Yeah.
They missed spots, and Barry Windham at this point, it's interesting to see how far he's fallen, because a couple of years after that, he does the new blackjack thing, and he looked awful there. I know Tim and I talked about that a while back, that one of the pay-per-views we did, he was in it with Bradshaw, and Wyndham looked like he was 80. Like he was moving around like he was, and he already at this point was starting to slow down. You could see some of the stuff he was doing in the ring was just not what it was, 10 years ago. And he wasn't even that old though. Like that's the mind-boggling thing, is that it wasn't like he's out there, 50, 60 years old, but it looked like it.
Yeah. I think too, the whole NWO versus Horseman thing, I think they just waited too long to pull the trigger on it. And I think that's what, like you said, it just a couple years too late. If they'd done when NWO was hot and the Horseman, maybe they could have had a really cool headlining feud, and they could have gotten more viewers versus whatever this was supposed to be.
Well, and I think Arn getting injured the way that happened hurt a lot too, because without Arn being there with Rick, then you only have Ric Flair and a bunch of other guys. Because
Right.
Benoit wasn't a Horseman from the get-go. It's not like you had Tully and you had Ole, or you had, JJ wasn't. He wasn't even involved. He was just the president, or the whatever commissioner. Essentially, is what JJ Dillon was for a while. He was like the commissioner, more or less. He was the on-screen face, at times. But you didn't have, without Arn and Rick being integral parts of the group and having the matches, it wasn't the Horsemen. So that's why Arn was there, and that's why they had to have David come in. But like I said, Benoit, Mongo, McMichael, like all these guys aren't Horsemen. Benoit fits the mold relatively well, but if it's just Ric Flair, it's like a new evolution. It's like Ric Flair and three other guys.
Right.
So I think that's what hurt them a lot too, with Arn getting injured the way he did and having to retire. That lost a lot of steam in the angle, because no one really, you have to have an invested interest in that team. And with Arn and Rick, you at least had two of the original four Horsemen members. Then when you only have one, it's just Ric Flair and his cronies.
I will say this too about this match. My OCD really kicked in that Kurt Hennig never pulled up his second strap. That really bothered me throughout this whole thing.
It was like Conan's pants. You were trying to reach in and put a strap on for him.
I just wanted him to lift it
That
up.
That sounded horrible. Put his strap on for him. Wow. We can add that to the blooper reel at the beginning of the show, guys. Oh,
yeah,
man.
right?
Put his strap on for him. Yikes.
Probably been more enjoyable than pay-per-view.
Line in
To be honest.
As soon as I said it, I was like, oof.
All right, so our main event is a stun gun ladder match between Goldberg and Scott Hall. The storyline here is at Starrcade the previous year, Kevin Nash defeated Goldberg after a use of a stun gun by Scott Hall, and that cost Goldberg the World Championship. So what do we do in that case? We put a stun gun hanging above the ceiling, and we have to have a ladder match.
The stun gun was on the roof?
Well, hanging from the ceiling.
You were like, stun gun above the ceiling? I'm like, that's anyways, yeah, no, it's been a great episode for misspeaking. Anyways, strap on, stun guns on the roof, whatever. Definitely better match than I thought it was going to be, in all honesty. It wasn't a great match, but it wasn't bad. Goldberg, had the knee injury, so he had that weird looking knee brace thing going. Disco Inferno got involved at one point. Let's just be thankful it wasn't a Viagra on a pole match. It was
Judy Bagwell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Judy Bagwell on a forklift, whatever. It definitely wasn't the worst thing on the card, put it that way.
Yeah. Scott Hall took some pretty nasty bumps off that ladder too. I gotta say, and this is probably right when he was really having his issues with alcohol and going in and out of rehab. And this is a long way removed from WrestleMania 10, like when he had that classic match with Shawn Michaels. So it's kind of funny to see where he went and where they did in this match. And then Goldberg, I felt like, was more focused on selling his leg injury than really doing anything. So I felt like Scott Hall really carried this match.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's interesting that Goldberg wrestled almost 18 minutes here. I mean, that's how long the match was. Normally wrestling 3 to 5 minutes.
but like Mongo said, though, it was like 17 minutes of Scott Hall and 1 minute of Goldberg.
Yeah.
So I mean, but the bump, you talk about bumps, the bump that Goldberg took off the ladder when Disco pushed him,
Mm-hmm.
he like headbutted the top rope, and he's like, oh, like reaching for his back. I'm like, oh, that had to hurt. He probably just got a stinger. Not like Sting, but like a stinger.
So we should mention Scott Hall actually retrieved the stun gun, but the stipulation was you actually had to use it to win.
On your opponent, because Disco got it, and that didn't end the match.
Nope, that did not end the match. So Goldberg eventually gets the stun gun. He kind of toys with Scott Hall a little bit. He tosses it up in the air, delivers the spear, and then he stun guns Scott Hall.
Don't forget the one-legged jackhammer.
Yep.
pretty much on one leg, selling the injury.
Yep.
And not to be confused with the one-winged angel. It was the one-legged jackhammer. Back when he gets to lift a guy up. Probably going to kill Drew McIntyre on Sunday here in a couple weeks. But it was an awkward 2-minute pause when he was toying with him and looking in the crowd, and he's holding the stun gun and stuff. It's like, what are we doing? They're just in there. And finally, like you said, he kind of laughed, threw it up, hit him with the spear, hit him with the jackhammer, and that was all she wrote.
It was the best way to describe it. It was kind of like being a dog and getting put down, because after that match, I was just glad to be done with this show. Because
we're not done though. We're not done though.
I know.
You forgot the ending you almost spoiled. What happened next?
Well, apparently they kind of jumped the gun here on the camera shot.
They go to the curtain and there's nobody there.
There's nobody there.
They're like, look who's coming out now. Oh, there's nobody there.
So Bam Bam eventually makes his way out to the ring.
He was in catering. Give him a break.
Yeah.
It was like Cesaro last night talking about how big Tropicana Field was, and that's why he couldn't get out there to help Shinsuke the week before. He was like, you know how big Tropicana Field is? He's like, by the time I would have got here to show you Michael Cole, you would have went home already. It's like Bam Bam's like, oh crap, I gotta go. I missed my cue. He's not really fleet of foot, so. But they've been toying the reason that he came to WCW was to fight Goldberg.
Mm-hmm.
And they slapped each other around for about 2 minutes, and then Scott Hall stun gunned everybody.
Yep.
And
that's it.
That's how they're showing off the air. I don't know. On paper, this should have been better. It wasn't like the worst thing we've seen. We've seen some real bad stuff. This one wasn't that level, but I struggled to give it much more than like a 5, honestly.
That's generous. I was thinking like a 3 or a 4.
Yeah, I would go in like probably the 5 range as well. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't. You could tell this is the start of the downfall for WCW.
They had a good run. The 83 weeks were over, and they were not long for this world after that.
I think the big problem is, like you joked about earlier, Vince Russo he did good in WWF when he had help, and then when he got all the power by himself, he made everything too gimmick heavy, and storylines were scrapped. And it's unfortunately kind of the same problems WWE's facing right now, where they don't really listen to the fans. They're just kind of doing what they think people want to see. And like you said about Drew McIntyre versus Goldberg, it's starting to scare me a little bit that I feel like what we joke about how bad WCW was, we're starting to kind of see trickle in to WWE. And as a wrestling fan, it's like, please God, no.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that they got Adam Pearce out of that match with Roman.
Mm-hmm.
Not to spoil it for anybody, if anybody listening hasn't seen SmackDown, but they used a loophole, and now it's not going to be Adam Pearce. It's actually going to be Kevin Owens, which is nice, because you imagine main eventing one of your 4 biggest pay-per-views of the year, and you have Drew McIntyre against Goldberg, and then you have Roman against Adam Pearce. Those are events. And then you have somebody like, I don't know, Akira Tozawa in the Royal Rumble. May as well just do that. Why not? Why not?
Or they'll bring Tajiri back and he'll get the.
Tajiri can still go.
No, I know.
At 86 years old or whatever he is. But again, we're getting away from the WCW stuff, but definitely not one of their better shows. But again, not one of their worst. I mean, we watched, Tim watched like 2/3 of the Battle Bowl. That's what it was. Yeah, the Battle Bowl one that we were going to do a couple months ago, and we decided to audible that because it was that bad. So I mean, there are worse pay-per-views.
Yeah, Starrcade '99 I think was a lot worse than this.
Yes.
So I mean, there's worse and there's better, and this one to me literally was right in the middle. It could have been, I think, like Tim said, a lot of the matches were just a little bit too long. I think the show overall could have been a lot better if you had, matches that the only matches that should have been long should have been the main event, the Fatal 4-Way, the Luchador for the Cruiserweight Championship. Right? I can't even say what I'm trying to say. And then the Flair match. Those are the only matches that should have been remotely long. The rest of them should have just been like average, 5 to 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And the show would have been a lot better.
Just seems like they didn't really build it too. That's the problem. Is I tried to watch the Nitro before just to kind of see their go home show, and even then they didn't really build this card. And I think that's the problem is they just assume that we have enough star power, people will buy the pay-per-view, and that's kind of their downfall. Was they banked on Goldberg and Scott Hall like selling the pay-per-view, and Scott Hall can only do so much. And like Tim joked, Goldberg's matches, if they go over 2 minutes, are usually terrible.
Yeah.
Well, and there was no DDP. There was no Sting. So, I mean, there were certain guys they were missing, and you can't, there's no point in having a Perry Saturn Chris Jericho match. You could have, it's funny because afterwards they had the hotline, and they had Jericho start a program with Booker T. I would have rather saw Booker T wrestle Jericho on the pay-per-view.
You also had only one title match on the show, too. It was just a Cruiserweight Championship. The world title wasn't defended.
Yeah, who had the world title at this point?
Hogan.
Right, because Nash gave it back to him, right?
Yeah.
Right.
The finger poke of doom thing. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, you, like I said though, you never even see it. He doesn't even come out with it during the attack. So like again, who has the world title? Unless you're a fan, you don't know. Like if you're you're a casual fan, you're thinking Billy Kidman's the champion of the world.
Yeah. It's not even the U.S. title, which is like their working man's title.
Yeah. Who had that at the time?
I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. Who had the tag titles? Yeah, like you said, there was one title on this whole show.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I wanted to point out during that four-way match for the Cruiserweight title, have you seen all the times that Kidman just about killed somebody with that shooting star press?
Mm-hmm.
And himself, yep.
He lands right on Hoovie's legs, like full, like knees on legs. And I remember seeing one a couple weeks ago that they put online of him kneeing David Flair in the face. Like he does a shooting star and lands right on Flair's face. It's like, man, Billy, you're a better athlete than that. But yeah, Tim hit the nail right on the head. There was no build up, like Mongo said, on the go home show. They were building behind the Flair angle and the Goldberg and Hall angle, and that was it.
Yeah.
No title matches other than the Fatal 4-Way. That's it. Like I said, who were the tag team champions? I don't know. Who was the U.S. champion? I don't know. I only know who the world title is because we know. But like a casual fan, like if you went to your buddy's house and he just happened to be there and he wanted to watch it, he wouldn't know. He'd be like, "Who the hell? Where are these belts?"
Right. And, they had a great ending to, the 98 Starrcade, that controversial ending, and then the finger poke of doom. So they had storylines going in, and you had a chance to build this, and they didn't. And like we just keep going here. It's just crazy. Like Hogan just got the title back in the most controversial fashion, and you can't make him give a rematch to Goldberg at this point, and then have Scott Hall interfere and set up for the next pay-per-view, because logically that would make more sense than what they did.
Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely WCW wasn't what it was at this time.
Sad.
Yeah. So that's our rundown of Sold Out 1999. Coming up for you guys next week, we enter Royal Rumble season. We're going to have a couple of Royal Rumble shows for you guys in a row, starting with Royal Rumble 2000, which is highlighted by Cactus Jack and Triple H and the Royal Rumble match. So looking forward to watching that and breaking that down for you guys next week.
Break it down. That show should be nice. And then, not to go too far into the weeds, but the following week is the Royal Rumble that Mongo and I were actually at. That was in Boston.
Yep, that's 2011.
Yeah. When that was the 40-man, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that was the first ever 40-man Rumble. There was supposed to be a lot of like surprises. There really wasn't. We were so disappointed with some of the stuff in that show. I know I don't want to jump the gun, but I mean, to sum it up, as a fan that went, we were disappointed. We were looking at each other like, what the why? Like, what? It's too bad, because they were like, oh, there's 40 guys, so they're gonna bring in all these guys you haven't seen. There's gonna be surprises. There was like 2.
But thankfully, it is, like Tim said, Royal Rumble season. I'm excited to talk about these Royal Rumbles, and I haven't seen Royal Rumble 2000 in a long time, so I'm ready.
Well, and it's, I think for me personally, Royal Rumble is my second favorite pay-per-view. I mean, you have WrestleMania, then you have the Rumble.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's too bad they're not a little bit more spread out, so that way you have something to look forward to like every 6 months. But SummerSlam again is probably 3, and then Survivor Series is 4 for me out of the big 4. But the Rumble, it's hard. If you're not a wrestling fan, it's hard to tell people like the point of the Rumble and get as a fan watching the Rumble, because you don't know who's coming out. You don't know what's going to happen. The element of surprise, everybody behind the scenes kind of knows, and who's supposed to eliminate who and all that stuff. But as a fan, the Rumble is definitely like 60 minutes or more of just like, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So that's coming up for you guys next week, Royal Rumble 2000. We'll be back next Saturday at 5. Until then, take care. I'm Tim Kurt.
I'm Roland Fulis.
And I'm Mongo.
And this is Wrestling with Wrestling Past and Present.
I hope you're all having a nice day.